Hello, and welcome to Neuromentoring. We are so glad you could join us.
I'm Lucy,
I'm Brian.
and together we explore what mentoring is in these neurodiverse spaces we call universities. Today's topic is part 2 of tech and wellbeing.
Yes, see, when we did the first part, basically we got really excited and we did far too much. I actually used a bit of AI to go through what we talked about and give us a list of all the things we talked about the last hour. So if you haven't gone back to listening to it, you can go back, and we talked about Apple ecosystems, Google Suites, Google Documents. We talked about Meter, In Your Face, Windows, university laptops, Microsoft subscriptions, Copilots, Office 365, Office Teams, Grammarly, Zotero, Siri, Otter AI, Parrot AI, and Goblin.tools, which wasn't bad for 45 minutes. We are going to extend a few of those themes today. But I think my first big question is, Lucy, after having a big chat about it, do you still like tech in university?
As somebody that's usually very black and white, I don't have an opinion at the moment.
Oh, tell me more, tell me more. See, this is interesting territory.
I'm actually still sort of in a position where I kind of want to take it all in, think about it, digest it, and then come up with an opinion. But at this point, I'm still sort of stuck on the fence in that I feel like there are so many sort of factors that influence the success of tech in education and wellbeing.
I think I've been on the fence since about 1993, which is a long time ago.
The year before I was born.
Oh my. So 93, 94 is the year I went to university first time, because I'm now really quite old. In my first year at university, because my dad worked in tech, I brought in a 386. This was one of the very early IBM desktop computers. And I would use it because I've been using it a little bit for my A-level homework. I used it for my first essay that I wrote. And I took my essay and put it in the Pigeonhole. No emails at this time. This was before my first email address. Big dot matrix printer. Printed it all out, stapled it together, put it in the Pigeonhole. It came back to me 2 weeks later, and I was refused a mark.
No.
Because I had missed the bit where you could only submit handwritten essays. In my second year, they got rid of this rule. But in my first year, my first essay was deemed unfit for submission because I had typed it on a computer. It did mean that my second essay in the same module that I submitted, I wrote by hand, thinking, oh no, I couldn't even use the computer for editing. I just can't touch this demonic machine. And in that essay, I got 38, which was my entire mark for that entire module. And technically, I failed that module in my first year because of tech. Now, tech's changed an awful lot since then. In my second, third year, I was allowed to start cutting and pasting, which works so much better for my processing. I don't think in a straight line. I can't write in a straight line. And here I am, years later, 30-something years later, I managed to get myself a doctorate. I'm very glad that when I was writing my PhD, I could use speech to text. So I walked, and this was during COVID and lockdown, I walked backwards and forwards in front of my computer, declaiming truth to my computer. And that's possibly the only reason I managed to get a PhD, because if I had to sit and type it, I would have got bored.
Do you know, I've got a very similar story.
Hi.
So I deliberately, and I've possibly mentioned this in another episode, but I deliberately chose a remote master's postgraduate course.
Hi.
And I came across sort of assistive technology for the first time. And all of a sudden, I didn't have to have the anxiety of just getting started. I had access to speech to text. I had access to documents being read aloud, however many times I needed to. I had access to coloured filters, which meant that I kept up to where I was reading. All of a sudden, I was able to learn in a much more fluid way. Okay, there were processes and I had to flick between programs, but actually programs like MindMap, talking about that flexibility of thinking, I've never been a linear person that starts at the top and works their way down. I have ideas that sort of ping to me at the most random of situations. I could be walking the dog, I could be cooking the supper, and these random ideas. And I loved the fact that I could just get those ideas down, organize them. And assistive technology at that point, I mean, we weren't even at AI at this point, at 2020. Really, it was in its real infancy. It wasn't even a thing. But just,
Yeah, I love being able to dump and shuffle.
yeah, and
That
organize.
sounds like something really bad dogs do in the park, dump and shuffle, but ew.
I kind of I relate it to, so I'm somebody who loves sorting things into piles. I've always been somebody that will throw everything on the floor and everything will be categorized and put into an order. Or if you're going through a big box of Lego, which I'm quite often guilty of, and put color order in things and your thoughts and your learning, all of a sudden, it's no longer copying notes, reading the books, copying that. All of a sudden, you had the freedom to have autonomy in how you learn. So in that sense, yes, I'm totally for technology for wellbeing and learning. But at the same time, there are caveats.
And it is, and I think this is a really important thing. We should be talking about tech and well-being and neurodivergent ways of thinking in terms of liberation. If we talk about some parts of tech that actually then put people back into boxes, that's when maybe we should be raising some red flags. If it becomes a chore, if it becomes excess busy work, if it becomes ways of saying this is the only way to do stuff, then I think we should just mope out at that point. There has also, and this is just more historically, well, not even big, long history, COVID changed an awful lot of things when it came to tech. It seemed to be that universities took a very deep breath and thought, right, we can now do things like record our lectures. I've been campaigning for at least 7 years before COVID hit that one of the universal designs for learning that we should actually put in as lecturers is to make sure our lectures are recorded so that people can catch up later on your own terms. Can I ask you, do you catch up lectures that have you had education yourself where you've actually had to catch up lectures and do things like that?
Because actually the university I went to was one of the first to offer an online international master's course. I mean, it's exploded in the offer since then. But they were one of the first universities. A lot of it was pre-recorded content. A lot of it was on an online portal system on a week-by-week basis. So you kind of decided on what tasks you were going to take and when. But so no, I haven't had actual live lectures recorded. I've had a lot of pre-recorded stuff. Now with my students, especially my students who are now in their third year of their undergraduate, they were completely accustomed to recorded stuff, so they don't think anything of it. But I think for the students who are struggling, the pre-recorded provide students an opportunity to listen to things over and over again, to pick things, to think about it. I think in that sense, it's amazing. And a lot of students do benefit from it. But at the same time, if they've deliberately chosen a degree that's in person and there's an awful lot of pre-recorded things and recorded this and recorded that, actually that's quite isolating, which is another separate issue, which then we sort of touch on the well-being side of things. So I think with all of these things, they're great when they work. But due to the flexible nature and presentations of neurodivergent individuals, there will be times where things work and there'll be times where things don't. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a hybrid approach where there is still in-person teaching, where you get that personal contact with your tutor.
And it doesn't just have to be between students, it can be between terms with this. So I worked with a student ages ago who, when he could go back and listen to lectures, always would go, right, well, maybe I won't go to the lecture itself, I'll go back and listen to the lecture after a bit, and then didn't get round to listening to the last week's lecture during the week, and then it became the week afterwards, and there was this sort of snowball of guilt, this huge pile of things he had to do, rather than the slow chipping away that actually turning up in the body allows you to do. Then on the other hand, suddenly everything clicked when they no longer listened to them at normal speed, but learned how to change the button to listen to them at 1.75. I see you nodding and smiling. There is a joy. Seriously, some lecturers, you're a bit slow. And if you are listening to this podcast at double speed, Hats off to you. Amazing stuff.
10 out of 10 brownie points.
Yeah. Do you listen at high speed as well?
I listen at 1.5 because, well, actually, no, I'm telling lies at this point. I have two different situations. I've had situations in the past where I've had to slow a video down
Yeah.
because I struggle at times with auditory processing. But then I have other times where I need it to speed up for me to be able to listen.
Yeah.
And I think I wish that was a thing even during 2020 when I was a student. For some of those lectures, perhaps, shall we say, that were more of a challenge to engage with.
Yes. Well, part of it is the research I'm doing at the moment is on the superior perceptual capacity in autism. And there is a lot of data out there that autistic folk take in information at a higher rate. They've got a greater bandwidth for it. And if that bandwidth isn't being filled up, then it gets filled up with all other kinds of snot. So actually being able to turn up the speed the information's going in, having that control over it allows you to focus because there's more going in, which means that the bandwidth isn't being taken up by all the distractions and ruminations and
Absolutely.
things going off in the background. So I'm now thinking of how to put together an experimental procedure where I can actually see the speed that people are listening to lectures at. That would be fascinating. Big proposal, here I come. But there is this use of technology that isn't just in the students, but actually in the institution is quite an important way to look at. The problem is if you have a wraparound institution, if you have sort of institution concept of technology, then sometimes it makes it really hard to separate work and job and learning and home. And I'm really aware that I wrote so many emails on the tube on the way in this morning. We don't have these naturally segregated times where we can get away from iPhones. Lucy, do you do anything to leave your iPhone behind?
So this is something that I continue to actively work on. So for my business as a safeguarding lead, like my phone's always there just in case, something comes through. On a personal level, I've actually tried to segregate calendars. I've tried to segregate and sort of play with some of my modes on my phone so that I can be unavailable, not be available 24/7, 7 days a week. And actually that's been transformative for my well-being. And putting those boundaries in place, the idea of it was a lot more challenging than actually doing it, if that makes sense. The anticipation of doing it put me off for such a long time that I procrastinated on. But now I've done it, I have time for myself again. But for students, when everything's online and the culture is social media, join this group, join our forum, join our website, join in on this, go onto Moodle, add to the discussion board. They're constantly being pinged backwards and forwards, whether it's for things for their social life on campus or in a society, or if it's on emails. Emails is constant and it's really hard to filter things out. I love Google, the Google suite of products. You'll hear me throughout part one of this episode and part two. I love the Google suite because on the Gmail suite, you've got promotions, which is probably a tab that I probably open once in a blue moon and can clear out. Social, which I instantly delete. And then you've got updates, which is quite an important one. And I love how it categorizes those automatically and filters them out so that you kind of only get the important ones in your main inbox.
But when I first came across that Google's could do this kind of thing, there was a student I was with and the university Microsoft system didn't do that. So actually you can forward your emails from your university to your Google stuff so that it works for you, which was a real eye-opener at the time. I have to admit, actually, I'm not great at separating my life from tech because I love tech too much.
Yeah.
Because my memory is not great. In fact, my memory is really rubbish. I need a lot of things to support me day to day. And my phone is it. My phone has all the lists that I need to do, the people I need to meet, the next event I need to go to. I live under the tyranny of my own phone because I choose to do so. I also have the focus modes which kind of make it a little easier. So at 9:30 every night, my phone goes into bedtime mode, and bedtime mode means no notifications from anyone except my mummy and my wife. Oh, and my
Yeah.
kids, just in case of emergency. So overnight, if my kids suddenly text me to say they're in the middle of nowhere and they need a lift home, yes, it will wake me up, but no one else will impinge upon my time. So
No.
I've got that very, very hard boundary because sleep is incredibly important. But actually, for the rest of it, it is my prosthetic.
But I think we should also mention that for some neurodivergent people, scrolling on their phone is a way for them to dissociate, recharge.
Yeah.
I certainly go through phases and I have to try and manage it with platforms like TikTok, particularly because of the way the algorithms run and the kind of content. At the moment, every other video is Star Wars, and my
Right.
reposted videos are getting significantly more intense. So it's definitely my current interest, but you want more and more and more and more and more and more. And I kind of have to manage it. Okay, let's give myself half an hour or however long I feel, and then I call it a day. Actually, leaving my phone in a place, in the same place so I don't lose it, because my
Amen, sister, preach.
if it's not in my hand, I can't, I
Yeah.
lose it. I'm not great. But actually, the act of putting it in my drawer so it's not available means that I've been reading more books, something that I have, that I really, really enjoy. But my phone at time has distracted me. But I'm sort of relating this to students in that they feel like some students will have boundaries and will have that time to dissociate, but then some people might find that they dissociate for a while and then they extend it for far too long and then they become overstimulated. So it's really a personal, subjective thing. And the more awareness you have, the better you get at managing it. But I think tech is a little bit like kryptonite.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's the strength of connectivity, inclusion, you know, adapting, making life easier, especially for people that suffer with executive functioning. But at the same time, the caveat is that where's the line for each person, and how do we as mentors communicate that with students to help them identify where that line should be drawn for them?
One of the ways that I've done this for years now is the notification cull. And it is a session that I will book in with a student and I'll say, right, we are going to talk primarily for this set, unless there's anything else going on that really needs to be addressed. We are going to make sure that your phone is not going ping, ping, ping with all those kind of, Papa John 3-for-1s. Well,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, if that's the only way you're getting food, then that's actually an important notification. Or is it social media going, yes, well, we're doing this, that, the other. Which bits do we pay attention to? And it is making sure that they come through at the right time. So one of the things that lovely Androids and iPhones now do is they have a scheduled notification. So you can dump all those really interesting things to appear on your phone at 4 o'clock. And at 4 o'clock, you can do what you said, have that nice, intentional, slightly stimmy, flicky flick through of your social medias that brings you joy. You're very, very wise to say putting a limit on the end, but the limit will change. There will be
Yeah.
days where you'll need to dump your head in that bucket a little bit more.
I
I'm not
think
sure
the
I like that image of dumping your head in a bucket.
the difficult thing with before X was X, there was a big update and a lot of people got fed up with it where you were getting notifications all of a sudden about people you were following. They tweeted this today or they tweeted that. And whilst you weren't checking Twitter because it had nothing to do with you, it reminded you that you have a Twitter account. So what do? Open it. You open it and you're like, actually, I didn't really want to do this. So it's very clever. And actually, you've got to tweak on each of the different platforms the settings for what you get notifications about.
Mm. And maybe as mentors, we need to investigate all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. As mentors, if there's a new social media, and there will be new social medias out there that'll keep on coming, we need to stay abreast of these kind of things so that we know when it's a good social media. And
Well, talking of good social media,
yeah,
there's a rise in something that a student of mine has been studying, zines, and I'd never heard of it.
oh, you've just taken me back to my old punk days, which are the zines were the photocopied black and white music magazines that were made by the masses for the masses.
But that's now gone on the online world.
How cool.
And I've come across, through having an interest in wellness, health, fitness, skincare, all those kind of things, a platform called Lemonade. We're not sponsored by them. I'm just mentioning it because I've come
No,
across.
but if they want to give us
I've come
money.
across. Yep, absolutely. And it's all about a niche interest in those things. It's like a crossbreed of Instagram, a blog, and TikTok all in one. And it's specifically marketed at young people who are interested in those particular things. And I think we're going to see a rise in that.
We'll see a rise in that in our neurodivergent people because there's always been there. So if you, what's your name? Steven Silberman's Neurotribes. He has a couple of pages about slam shacks, which were sort of 1940s, 1950s printing come sci-fi geek warehouses where people would actually have these sort of creative areas where they'd be creating things based around special interests. And he traces a bit of the neurodiversity movement back to these slam shacks, and that digital slam shack now coming together where people can get together and share the brilliance of stuff in a way that's slightly punk and not off the shelf and not commercialized too much.
One word: Discord.
Discord. Oh, I love me a good Discord channel.
Same.
Yeah. In fact, having worked with students who elected not to speak, or at least not to speak to me for a term or so, actually Discord was a really good way forward. We'd sit and we'd Discord to each other, next to each other, until it was time to talk. Really, really good way of sharing space and thoughts, but not just one-to-one Discords, the multiple Discords.
No, I have students that use it in so many different ways. Some students use it to game together with an online international community. I've got another student who uses it to co-create fiction and illustrations, and people work on. It's just so cool.
And it's that thing as mentors. This is a beautiful communication channel for flourishing. If our student wants us to be there, like with all forms of communication, I think it's imperative that we turn up if we can. And it's sticking that if we can. We may be too old. I don't ever think we're too old. I mean, I'm fairly ancient. I remember GeoCities. There we go. I was an adult before GeoCities came along. So I've seen the internet ebb and flow. And perhaps we are now at that stage where we don't have that excuse of I'm too old for tech, because if you're too old, you've seen it grow and you'll know what it becomes into. On this, seeing tech grow, how do you find new tech? Do you just buy new tech? Do you beg it? Do you borrow it? I don't steal tech, or at least I don't ever get caught stealing tech. How is it that you appraise yourself of new trends?
I am a sucker for a gadget, whether that's a sort of a utility gadget for the home, whether it's a smart anything, plugs, speakers, although I've read an interesting article this week, which I won't go into, but maybe that's a whole other episode in itself.
How to
maybe
stay safe. Yeah.
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 And I kind of will use things until they stop working, but I am a sucker, unfortunately, for connectivity and things working fluidly. So as I've previously mentioned, our household is an Apple household, purely for my watch, my phone, my work phone, my computer, my laptop, all sync together beautifully. And as a neurodivergent person who could lose things and say things sort of ambiguously, it's great because I haven't got to save things in separate places. It all goes to the cloud.
As someone with memory issues, yes, it's lovely when it all works together. Can I also stick in there air tags, because I can now find my sunglasses, which I never be able to do. But having just a big arrow that points around your house to where you've left your shit, it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
Rude words. Never mind. Well, we'll see if I can use AI to edit out what Brian said. That kind of the way it all works together, there's an absolute joy in that. On your radar, so a piece of tech that isn't out yet. There was a multi-platform AI thing called Rewind, which basically is your browser history on steroids, where you can go back and see what you were interested in. It would use AI to help you find all the stuff that you had seen once upon a time and was on the tip of your tongue. They're
Wow.
bringing out the limitless, which is kind of like a little clippy-on microphone that you wear on your thing, and it listens to all your conversations. Bit spooky, but it does it all in-house and encrypted. That's probably okay. And then you can say, "Oh, I was talking about this with John 2 weeks ago, and I can't remember exactly." And I go, "Oh, this is the little summary of the conversation you had." Ooh. I'm not sure what I think about that.
I'm a little bit, because AI is still very new. I
Yeah,
love what AI can do, but I still worry about ownership of data
very much.
and security at this point. I
Yeah.
think until we have the security and the boundaries in place of where AI potentially, in a behavioral sense, starts and ends, not from an intelligence or knowledge sense, just where it starts and stops in terms of protecting us Homo sapiens
Mm.
from
Mhm.
security threats. I love the kind of things, and for neurodivergent people, what AI can do. But I'm a little bit like, oh,
Well,
you know,
there's part of me with data security, there's part of me that just wants to sort of subvert it a little bit. And I know that any time that my face has gone up into Chat GTP because I've been asking it about things, sort of the whole sort of selfies and stuff, I've always asked it, who is this lovely person? Just so the AI knows that anyone that looks like me is automatically lovely. See, I'm trying to get it in there really early. Yeah. But on the sort of serious side, actually making sure that our information is safe.
yeah,
But if we're leaving a digital footprint that can then be mined, maybe that gives us good as well as bad. And we're far too early to know where it's all going to unfold.
yeah. What I worry about is the safety of your knowledge,
Yeah.
and if that then can be privatized and sold on.
Yeah. So part of this, just sort of moving on to big companies owning data, or Google in particular, particularly Google Docs, I do recommend to students for shared work.
Mm,
This is where I do show my age. In my entire educational career, I've only ever had to do one group work because I went to school before group work was a thing. And I had to do group work as part of my first year PhD. And I decided to do group work with my group. We did it about trusting group work. So we ended up trusting each other, got a bit meta, a bit fast. But how would you recommend Google for groups?
when I first used it, I don't know if I've mentioned this story before, but I did some group work in my undergraduate where I was concerned for productivity. And what I liked about Google Docs is that whilst there wasn't a chat feature at the time, I'm talking nearly 9 years ago. Gosh, that's gone quick. Even then, it was still a great tool because you could work on things in real time together, and you didn't have to log in and out and have specific licenses. If you've got a Gmail account, which most of my peers did, or if you were invited to it, if you didn't have a Gmail account, you could see who had contributed what, when, and how. So you could kind of, fortunately, I automatically took on like a leader role.
Yeah.
You could kind of monitor people's contributions, and that worked really, really well. And I think doesn't matter if you've got a Chromebook, a MacBook, a Windows or other, a laptop, a phone. If you've been invited to a group Google document, you can work on it anytime, anywhere. Whereas I find where there are other providers of similar group platforms, involves a subscription or a free trial or log in here and log out of there. And most universities provide all their students with a 365 account, which then if you've got your own 365 or Windows program, which can affect where things are saved, and all of a sudden it becomes a nightmare. Whereas a Google document, you share it, someone logs in, boom, they've got access. I just think there's so much more accessibility to it.
It stops the barriers of multiple
Yeah.
subscriptions not playing with each other, and that kind of fighting of the apps within your machine to see who's got supremacy. I'm a great fan of Google Docs mainly because it works really nice on my phone. which means
Yeah.
I can sit in a park and just sort of scroll through and do a little bit of adding and stuff. And then Google Docs also has really good text, speech to text recognition.
Yeah.
On your phone, you just press a button and chat away into it and then edit afterwards. Or likewise, on any computer, you've got some really good speech to text stuff just by pressing go.
Yeah.
The downside I found with speech to text is I always start off just by putting a little bit in the comments saying, I'm going to do some speech to text, because I don't want to freak out anyone else who's sharing my document with all these words suddenly appearing.
Yeah.
This is a horrible overachiever. and I just want them to know this is just Brian talking at full flow, and you know Brian, he doesn't shut up. So it allows my digital persona to reflect myself, but hopefully in a way that doesn't trample the work of other people.
See, what I remember one of the course leaders on my master's, the first thing she said, biggest tip for any student, put something down.
Yeah.
And for most students, irrespective of neurodivergence or not, I think for most students, it's that want for perfection. I don't know how to get this right from the start. Whereas speech to text, you get something out. No, you don't get the grammar always. You don't. It depends on what kind of program you use, and you do have to go. It's not completely emancipating of, getting ideas down, but you've got something down. You've got something to work from and grow with.
I
And
had to put in a new mentoring bid, and it's still in draft form, but it was to make sure that the funding's coming through from a third party kind of stuff. Never done one of these before. I had the blank page and I was sitting there going, oh, what shall I do? And then I asked Chat GPT, GTP, GP, whichever way around it is. I asked it, can I have a structure for a mentoring bid? But actually, I'm going to rewind. I asked it for 3 different structures for mentoring bids and how I could put it together. And I could see 3 different versions that it then created. And I said, actually, I kind of like version 2, but can we add in this, this, and this? And suddenly I then had a structure that I could then go away and talk and type and turn into my own voice. But it got rid of that fear of the blank page. And this, I think, is now moving into, maybe for the last little section here, is the AI and university kind of thing. Yes, AI will help you in your studies. AI will also limit you in your studies. Try and find the middle way.
yeah, I think in the gathering data,
Yeah.
organizing your thoughts, doing a little bit of research, AI is phenomenal. But there's a reason that virtually every university now has a no AI policy, or actually, I've seen some universities that claim how you can use AI in an assignment, which is interesting.
Here we've actually got a balance. So for each module, you have to give at least 10%, can be up to, I think, 25%, either that basically no AI.
Yeah.
For only about 10 or 25% of all assessments. The other end of it is 10 or 25% of you need to use AI, and then your assessment is you posting your conversation that you've had with AI, which is a brilliant, I think we're going to get a lot more of that in the future, or versions of that. And in the middle, it's use AI, but please cite it.
Yeah.
Don't copy big things. Use it as you would, my first degree, I had an awful lot of philosophy. We would go as philosophers to go and sit in the pub with a pint or a coffee, and we'd talk about what we'd read backwards and forwards. Now, that's a wonderful way of doing it, but you do have to put up with, well, other people in the pub making stuff up. This is what the lesson I learned for ChatGTP. It's exactly the same, except I'm not in the pub. That I'm talking to this other, and this other gives me back ideas that I then have to go and correct and find out and synthesize and put forward. But please check your university. Universities vary. There are some universities which, as soon as you even sniff a chat GTP, will actually have you against the wall. And potentially,
Yeah.
the research isn't out here yet, but I have a worry. And I have a worry because our autistic folk quite often develop language and writing and not even things like phonics, but they use Gestalt processing. They look at the whole. So if you've got autistic kids, they will quite often use entire sentences, and they'll use the same sentence and move it around before they break down the sentence into its meaning components. Because of this, there's potentially a tendency to write sentences that are beautifully and wonderfully formed, like ChatGTP does.
Yeah.
And so it's in my little stockpile of things to research. Is, are autistic people more likely to be pulled up for using AI when they haven't? And when they do, I think the toxic process of, it should be just going to your lecturer just having a little chat with you to make sure you know your stuff. But that can become a disciplinary measure, and it can be internalized. And particularly if you've never been in trouble at school because you're
It's
a good kid, scary.
frightening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm very fortunate. I was in trouble all the time at school, so disciplinary things just it happens, and you wander off.
I think there needs to be more settings that offer a more flexible approach, like you've described where
Yeah.
you are, because actually that creates a culture of transparency. Look, yep, I've used it. This is what I did. Da, 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 da. But I think it's very much still a grey area. And I wouldn't like to think that students don't use it, even if it's just to organise their notes or to research something, feel like, oh, I absolutely cannot touch AI to their disadvantage,
Yeah.
It's a
Making
new
sure
it's a new area.
it's creating the checkerboard of black and white thinking.
Yeah.
It's not getting rid of black and white thinking. It's actually talking about this. And this is where the mentoring space is pivotal. It gives
Mm.
a place for us to talk about these superbly big ideas that change the way and the process in how we think and become students and mentors and lecturers and teachers, how we do academia together, because we have these backstage places to try things on to see if it works, and if it works for us, and if it works for you. And I think that's the heart of it. I think that really sums up quite nicely and brings us towards the end of this wonderful session where, wonderful 2 sessions. I'm sure we'll come back to it again and again because it is so intertwined anymore. So thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Brian.
If you have any questions, we would love to hear them at neuromentoringpodcast@gmail.com.
This has been Neuromentoring. Be
Brilliant.
brilliant.